everyone. We wanted to take a quick moment to thank you all for joining us today. This podcast was recorded and is made available to you by Whitley Penn LLP and WP Wealth LLP solely for informational purposes. The information, views, and opinions expressed in this podcast are general in nature and are not intended to be construed as the provision of financial or investment advice by Whitley Penn or WP Wealth. The information discussed in this podcast is accurate as of the day it was recorded, but may then become outdated over time. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions, comments, or concerns in regard to the content presented. Thank you again for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
All right, welcome to another episode of WP Talks. I'll be your host for today, Shane Miller. I'm a partner of WPWealth. It's our wealth planning group based out of Fort Worth. This is another episode in the WPCares series, and I'm really excited about today's episode because we are featuring the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, which is an organization that myself and Josh Agron, one of our partners, is involved in. I've got Leah Swanson. She's the executive director joining us today. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, Josh Agron, he's a partner in our audit group. He's been serving with Leukemia Lymphoma Society for 7 years. Is that right?
Yeah, give or take. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So I want to dive in, talk about this great organization, what you're doing, some of the events, some of the initiatives, and really get into the heart of what LLS does. I was introduced to LLS through Josh, through the Light the Night event. And maybe that's where we should start. Josh, you want to talk a little bit about how you got involved in LLS Sure. and what about the organization kind of drew you in?
Yeah, so kind of rewind the tape, I don't know, 8-9 years, whatever that may be. My brother and mother at the same time were actually I guess my mother was diagnosed first with breast cancer, stage 3 breast cancer, and then within a few months of her, my brother was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And so at the time, I don't know, my mother was probably late 50s, my brother early 30s, and so that was a big blow to kind of our family and everything. And so I was invited by Nick Salamone, who's been involved with the executive committee and the board for a few years as well, who was a survivor of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so I went to a breakfast that he invited me to learn more about Leukemia Lymphoma Society and the Light the Night Walk. And so I attended that, and the speaker that was at the event mentioned how the port to inject chemotherapy directly into the body was actually founded through LLS research. And my mother was telling me about the port, and I'm here in Texas. My parents and my family are in Rhode Island, where I'm from. And so it kind of strung a thing with me of wait, the port, like that's a LLS thing? Like, okay, let me learn more about this. And so I signed up at the event to kind of learn more about LLS, and I've since gotten, we've done the Light the Night Walk now as a firm for 7 or 8 years, but I was just surprised that something that is so common in every cancer treatment, not blood cancer, not lymphoma, whatever, but anything that it's common in most cancer treatments when you're receiving chemotherapy is the port. So that really drew me to it, and ever since then, I've raised money every year individually and as the firm, through Whitley Penn. So
yeah, awesome. Well, Leah, you're the expert here, so would you mind telling us a little bit about the mission of LLS and specifically your role with the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the executive director of what we call the Red River region. So we are a national organization, and we have 27 different regions as part of LLS. And the Red River region is all of North Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas. And so, as mentioned, and you mentioned, Shane, we'll talk a little bit more about Light the Night and how you guys got involved. But really, the organization, it is the largest blood cancer organization, but we're actually the second largest cancer organization. And so we, really have three pillars. We fund research. We absolutely believe that there is a cure to cancer and it's going to be in our lifetime. And research is really the key. LLS has funded 56 out of 65 FDA approvals have been funded by LLS for blood cancer research. But just like Josh said, so many of those FDA approvals are being used on other types of cancer. So while we are a blood cancer organization, we're focused on curing cancer. And that gets me really excited. Another thing that is part of the research is something called the Children's Initiative, and that's fairly new for us. Leukemia is the most common form of children's cancer. And unfortunately, there's not enough research that's been put towards funding new research for children. So of the children that survive, about 80% of them have lifelong side effects from the harsh chemo and radiation that their little bodies can't handle. And so LLS is funding $100 million in research to find more drugs that's precision medicine targeted to kill that cancer and let the kids, thrive after cancer and not just survive it. And so we're absolutely focused on a cure through research. We are also focused on helping patients financially. That's a huge portion of what we do just in the DFW area. We've given over $3 million to patient financial aid. And then the third pillar is advocacy. We want to make sure that every patient has access to care. And we're advocating for those patients. We have one patient that we highlight sometimes that's over $1 million in debt because he had a cancer diagnosis, and that's not okay. So those are really our three pillars. But we're here to find a cure to all cancer.
Wow, that's great. And it's a pretty powerful message when we're saying we're not just focusing on blood cancer, but we're trying to eliminate all cancer. And certainly the efforts speak to what you guys are doing, and obviously the results are there. That was it, 56 patents, are actively fighting this disease. So that's great to hear.
Well, and I want to. So the other interesting thing too, I seem to learn something every single year, right? I go to these events, I hear people talk, and one of the things I thought was interesting is blood cancer is the reason why it's so successful. And Lee, you can correct me if I say this the wrong way, but it's the only one that you can take out of the body, treat, and then kind of put back into the body, because it's normally you don't take a tumor out of an organ and then shove it back in there. So it's blood you can take out, you can look at it, you can study it, you can figure out what's going on, you kind of put back in the body. So I thought that's an interesting thing as well.
Absolutely.
Josh, I'm so proud, but absolutely you're right. So blood is easier to test. It's easier to transport. And so they believe that the cure to cancer is going to come from blood cancer research. And so, I mentioned almost half of those FDA approvals is being used on other types of cancer. And so brain cancer, breast cancer, stomach cancer, pancreatic cancer, but even things like rheumatoid arthritis. And so absolutely focused on all cancers, but there's amazing therapies that are happening right now that are being used. And even, instead of infusions, finding pills, instead of someone having to go through, those horrible chemo treatments and infusions, there's now pills that are being used to treat other types of cancers as well as blood cancer, which my personal connection, my mom, I watched her go through a blood, she has multiple myeloma, which is an uncurable type of blood cancer. But it's absolutely something that I watched her go through a transplant, and it's horrible, absolutely horrible treatment. So to know that in the future, there's a potential, pill that you can take versus going through that, just, gets me excited that there's so much research that's happening to, to make a cancer diagnosis not so scary.
Yeah, it's very encouraging. And so I mentioned earlier about Light the Night, which is an awesome event that you put on, and I participated in the virtual version last year. I had done the in-person version in years prior, but would you mind telling us a little bit about what Light the Night is, and then maybe some of the other things, the other events or other initiatives within LLS?
Absolutely. I'd love to. And Josh, both of you have experienced it, so you guys can weigh in too. But Light the Night is absolutely an incredible event. It's both for friends and family and our patients, as well as for our corporate teams. And so I know you all have participated as a corporate team, but Light the Night is an event where we all come together. What makes it special is that it happens at night. It's not an endurance event. It's very much a family and a corporate event. And one of the things that makes it so special is that every participant gets a lantern. And we have white if you're a survivor of any type of cancer. We have gold if you're doing it in memory of someone that you've lost, and red to celebrate and honor those. And so it really is just such an incredible event. And we have a ceremony, our opening ceremony, where we turn on our lanterns by color, and all of the survivors go into a circle of survivor, and a big white light shines up in the sky to celebrate that hope for those survivors. And then, we go on a leisurely walk, but there's, fireworks and face painting, and, it's really, like I said, a family and a corporate event, but it gives me goosebumps even just to think about it. It's really so beautiful. But who hasn't had someone diagnosed with cancer that they love, that they can come and, and celebrate? We have a remembrance pavilion where you can go in the remembrance pavilion, take a picture of your loved one, write them a note of someone that you've lost. So it really is just it's a wonderful event.
And it's very kid friendly too. I mean, I got 3 little guys two boys and a girl of my own. And so it's really a cool event because it's nighttime, right? It's usually in November, and it's, kind of I think it's usually around the weekend when you turn the clocks or whatever, right? I think. And so it's one of those things where it's nighttime. So the kids are like, oh, we're up past our bedtime, right? And but then on top of that, right? So they get to light a lantern and walk, it's like a mile walk, very leisurely walk, as Leah said. And the kids absolutely love it. They have, jump houses and other stuff beforehand, but at the end of it, when you finish the walk, when the fireworks are going, and I don't know, I think it's an incredible experience, and it's very moving for a lot of people. And so I think that it's one of the coolest events I've been to, which is why we do it every year and why we attend. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't attend. Anyway, that's pretty cool.
Nationally, it's the fastest growing event, Shane, and in terms of walks. And it depends on the timing. So we do have 115 walks. We are a national organization. So we have 115 across the country. Here in North Texas, it's the end of October, and in Fort Worth, it's November 6th, that first weekend in November. So just depending on the market, check on the LLS website to find the market near you. But October 23rd and November 6th are here in the Metroplex.
Perfect. Well, mark your calendars. That's definitely something you want to be a part of. So Josh, you've been involved for a while. I know that Whitley Penn, we do corporate sponsorships. We help raise money. You and I both sit on the executive committee. What are some of the bright spots over the years that you've served this group that you've seen? Obviously they're doing a lot in terms of supporting research, but are there any testimonials, or are there any stories that kind of stick out in your mind that kind of reinvigorate you for this cause?
I think it's kind of telling the stories. I think there's just so many people out there that have been impacted by cancer. And so I think, what we like to do every year at Whitley Penn is we like to show a little tearjerker video, of a survivor, or somebody that went through all the treatment, and that was all funded by LLS research and was helped by LLS throughout the entire situation. That way we try to make sure there's not a dry eye in the house. That's the key, right? Really pull people towards the situation, kind of what's going on. And so for me, personally, over the last 7-8 years I've been involved, it's just kind of the overall commitment that LLS has to curing cancer, which is kind of a wild thing to think about. Once you cure cancer, all these people are out of a job at LLS, but that, they'll figure something out, hopefully, right? Because they're not.
You're going to hire me, Josh.
That's why I'm going to hire Leah. I would hire you in a minute. But it's one of those things where it's, everybody is committed to this, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to, but I think that's one of the things for me is that these guys go in every day, trying to raise money, trying to help the cause, and trying to cure cancer, which is, I don't know how else you can, it's not an easy job.
It's a big, daunting task, but it's very unifying, it seems. And you definitely get a sense of community within the organization. I'm sure, Leah, you have countless stories and experiences of how LLS is making an impact, and certainly relationships that you've built over the years.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think a couple of things when when you participate, and I know both of you have examples of this, but when you even just post on, on social media that you're participating or you mention it to someone, that's when all of a sudden you hear about those stories. So we have a company in the Frisco area that we work with, and the CEO had an SVP that had worked for him for years, and he never knew that he lost a child to leukemia, right? But all those stories of the cancer journeys that people have gone through, I mean, once you start talking about your involvement, that's when people really start sharing with you their own personal stories that you might have known them for years and you didn't know. But, I think there's so many of them that stand out to me. But I mean, these stories and these tear jerkers that Josh mentioned, I mean, they're people right here in Fort Worth. They're in every single community. They're, the new committee member we just had join that her first grader just had a classmate that passed away. We have another one of our chairs in the Collin County area. He lost his daughter. She just landed a job as a mechanical engineer at 23. She was a rock star and had such a short journey. But then we also have those that, we see every day that if CAR T therapy hadn't been funded by LLS, they wouldn't be here today, and then we have other people that are, in the middle of their fight that don't have any other options, but they're hoping for another funding, So, I mean, there's so many stories of survival, of grief. But one of my favorite parts of the job is just seeing all these amazing volunteers that have been through so much, but they use a lot of that grief for good and to turn that story around for someone else so that the next generation doesn't have to go through that. So, someone else doesn't have to leave the hospital. I'll tell you this last thing in terms of the sad stories, but a volunteer said, after years and years and years of battling with her son, been to all over the country with treatments and trials, and to walk down the hallway of that hospital without her child, is just something that sticks with me and helps me. I pop out of bed every morning thinking about our Children's Initiative and how we can make sure. I have 3 generations. I'm a cancer survivor myself. I had neck cancer at 43 years old. And, but it doesn't discriminate, right? So it's not something that it discriminates. And you just never know. Half of men, a third of women are diagnosed with cancer. And you think about that, and those are some pretty big numbers. And so how do we fight for the next generation so someone else doesn't have to go through that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you're involved in an organization like this, how it shifts your perspective, because we get so caught up in the day-to-day of, I'm so frustrated, I'm in traffic or whatever it is, right? And the reality is there's people that have significant struggles going on, and we just need to be mindful of that. Getting involved in an organization like this is a great place to start, helping out other folks in your community who could be suffering, because when you get news like that, life stops. I mean, everything stops down, and it's the focus. So we certainly want to shine a light on this great group. I encourage all of our listeners to get involved. Certainly November 6th, Light the Night, be there. It's so great. Once you go one time, you'll be back every year. It just lights you up. And then of course, making donations is always helpful. There's a lot of folks, especially with the coronavirus pandemic last year, that struggled raising funds just because it's not top of mind, out of sight, out of mind. And so make sure that these groups get attention and that you can get involved with them. Certainly follow on social media, like, comment, share this episode. And if you would like help with charitable giving strategies, the folks at Whitley Penn are happy to help you with that. That's a complimentary thing that we could do for you. But we just want to make sure that these groups, specifically in our communities, are getting attention, that they're thriving, because the missions are so important.
And I think too, you got to think about that too, right? I mean, coronavirus hit everybody hard last year, whatever, but cancer doesn't stop, right? And so one of the things too is, LLS still needs the research dollars, and those research dollars come from everybody, around. So just, you can't stop the research just because we don't have the dollars. We got to find the dollars. We got to figure it out, and we got to kind of, move forward. And so there's other. The great thing about LLS is there's other, initiatives that you guys have, that's not just Light the Night that we talked about. You guys do a lot of other stuff, team and training, which is I'm not physically fit enough to do that kind of stuff. The stair climb probably couldn't swing that one either, but there's other initiatives. I don't know if we have time to talk about that, but Lee, I don't know if that's something you can talk about, the other ones that you guys have going on at LLS.
Absolutely. So lots of different campaigns. So we have our of the year. We have our Man and Woman of the Year campaign. We have our Students of the Year campaign. And those are both, competitions. The Students is a 7-week competition. The Man and Woman is a 10-week competition where people just raise unbelievable funds for LLS. We also have the Team and Training, as you mentioned. You don't have to be in phenomenal shape, Josh. You don't have to run a full marathon, but you can if you want to. You can run a half, you can run a 5K, you can do a hike, you can do a cycle event. So all sorts of events, even virtual events in these days that you can do through Team and Training. We do have the stair climb, and we have a St. Valentine's Day luncheon and fashion show. But really, we have events where you can donate. We have events where you can be a participant, but we also have other ways to give. And so, there's certainly ways to give through a planned gift and a state gift. You mentioned, charitable contributions, donor advised funds. Heck, you can, give a percentage of, your life insurance policy to LLS. There's all sorts of ways that people can give, and just touching on, COVID and the coronavirus. Cancer doesn't stop, and there's people that have been affected, but there's people that lost their jobs and insurance, and they were trying to decide, should I even go to the doctor? So people delayed going to the doctor, but also people were having to decide between, prescription medicine and putting food on their family's table. And so that's where LLS comes in and is able to fund, kind of urgent need, paying for rent, paying for their electricity, paying for groceries. Those are all things that LLS does to help patients so they can, focus on their fight and not focus on, how they're going to pay the bills for their family. And so that's, a huge piece of what we do. And that is unusual for a nonprofit. So there's lots of different ways to get involved. And just touching on too, those are events and, ways to give. But we also want, volunteer leadership like Shane and Josh here, call me up and send me an email. Would love for you to get involved. We have committees for every single one of our events. There's different ways to get involved. We have boards and board leadership. So becoming a board of trustee, or even, ways for young professionals to get involved. And so we have something for everybody. Everybody can be a part of curing cancer. And I promise you, it's a great journey, and it's a great experience to feel like you're really giving back to, something that's bigger than yourself and such a great organization.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to add too is that we've been doing it for years at Whitley Penn, raising money and getting together internally, and we got our teams in our different offices to try and raise funds. But the best part about it is the LLS folks, and we got Allison here in Fort Worth that just kind of keeps us on task. That whatever we need, she'll help with. And that's the great part about it is, they're motivated to help us raise money, and so the more they help, the more money we raise, the better it is for LLS. So it's whatever help we need. The folks at LLS will give us to make sure that we get our events off the ground here at Whitley Penn, or to make sure that, we get the most bang for our buck whenever we're trying to do a fundraising effort. So.
Such a great point, Josh. We definitely try to make it simple for everybody. So we have templates, we have posts to share. We know that, asking busy executives to get involved and help us, we definitely try to make it absolutely try to make it easy. But for companies, getting there, especially during this, virtual environment, it's such a great team building activity for companies and ways to get engaged. So, when someone goes through a cancer diagnosis, we want companies to tell their employees, hey, LLS is a resource for you. So we have a lot of companies that actually go and give their employees information on LLS, Information Resource Center, and all the patient financial assistance that we have. So a patient will typically go to their family, their doctors, and they tell their company about their diagnosis. So wouldn't it be great if every company knew about the resources that LLS had to offer, and could, tell their employees about it? So it's great for companies, for their own employee satisfaction as well.
So I'm listening to this podcast and I'm fired up about LLS and I want to get involved. If I go to our website, where do we go?
Well, because there could be people listening from anywhere and everywhere, I would say the best place to go is lls.org, and then you can type in your city, and then be connected to us locally. So we do have staff for every campaign in every market. So reach out that way. But absolutely, I'm the executive director here in the DFW area. Reach out to me. Would love to hear your story. Would love to get you involved and find the right place for you. So feel free to reach out. leah.swanson@lls.org is my email. And but again, go to the website and you can track down all the different campaigns and the staff who work with each of the campaigns as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll post all of that whenever we post the new episodes, so that you'll be able to have quick access to get involved and attend the events and be a part of LLS. So I think that's going to do it for us on today's episode. Please share this with anybody you think would be interested in listening. We're going to be continuing to roll out content, and hopefully in a year maybe we can reconnect and see how 2021 went, how the fundraising campaign went, and what's new with LLS. So we're going to close out this episode, and as always, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.